This hall has great memories for me. 61 years ago, at the age of 20, I sat there and I heard Clement Attlee speak at the time of the defeat of German fascism. And in this hall, the General Assembly of the United Nations met for the very first time. And the Charter of the UN begins by saying, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has caused untold suffering to mankind." That was the pledge my generation gave to the younger generation. And the UNESCO Charter begins, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defences of peace must be constructed." Now, I must say straight away, this is not a war on terror. It is not a war on terror. There is no moral difference between a suicide bomber and a stealth bomber. Both kill innocent people for political purposes. And I think it's very, very important that we get that clear. 9/11 and Fallujah were on a parallel. This is an imperial war, and for God's sake, in Britain, we ought to know what an imperial war is all about. We've had more of them than anybody else. Right across the road here is a statue of Richard I, Coeur de Lion, led the Crusades to capture Jerusalem for the Christians. They all failed. The only people who did well out of the Crusades were the arms manufacturers, because they sold weapons to both sides. And of course they did extremely well. And if you go to Westminster Abbey, just a few feet from where we're standing, you'll actually find a plaque in Westminster Abbey commemorating the people of the British race who built the British Empire. I mean, it was just open, is what you taught people. And we used to say, the sun never sets on the British Empire. And the Americans said that's because God doesn't trust an Englishman in the dark. But, you know, we arrested Mr. Gandhi. Was he a terrorist? We arrested him. I met him in 1931, and when he was in London, somebody said to him, "What do you think of civilization in Britain?" Gandhi said, "I think it would be a very good idea." And that was the... So don't make any mistake about it. This is an imperial war. And the Americans are now trying to replace Britain in the Middle East. Why did we go into Afghanistan in 1834? Was it to bring democracy? No, we didn't have any democracy here. Why did we go into Egypt in 1882? It wasn't to help the women of Egypt, because women in 1882 in Britain didn't have any votes here. It was the control of the region, and now the Americans are coming in with exactly the same objective. And the thing, this is what relates to what we're doing now, the use of religion to win the war is what the real crime is. If you say that God tells you to kill people who worship another God, you're infecting the body politic with a poison that can last for 1,000 years. This war may be over, but the hatred built up in Britain and America against the Muslims to win this war will continue with children and grandchildren. It is an absolute outrage that this should be used. And if God is on both sides, there's no prospect of peace. Then they invent this figure called a moderate Muslim. What is a moderate Muslim? Is he a man who doesn't mind the fact you've invented his country and killed his family? Is that what a moderate Muslim is? The whole thing is an outrage. And you see, it isn't only an attack on the Muslim faith. Be careful. Maybe the Muslim faith now. But build up those laws or establish those laws that allow you to imprison people without trial, and it can apply to anybody. So I say to Muslims who are here, in defending your rights, you are also defending our rights, because we have a common interest in a society where men and women are not charged and imprisoned without trial and held without trial, and in many cases, in a Guantanamo way, tortured as well. Now, I finished. I was told to be brief, and I tried to be disciplined. I have 10 grandchildren, 2 of my little granddaughters at a school in London with 77 nationalities and a refugee centre in the school. I went there the other day, like talking to a General Assembly of the United Nations. They have Christian friend, Jewish friend, Muslim friend, Chinese, Nigerian, American, Japanese. This is the world for them. You don't have to explain it to them. That's what the world is. And of course they grow up with that is normality. And if we divide those children on the grounds of religion, we're planting the seeds of hatred that could lead them to fight each other. Tom Paine once said, "My country is the world. My religion is to do good." And I don't think you can do better than that. Thank you for inviting me.